Hello and welcome to the Illuminate Inclusion channel. I'm here with Lauren again today, and today we are talking about tuning into your child's meltdown. So we're going to have a think about some of the signs that your child might be approaching a meltdown, and then think through some of the strategies and tips of what you might want to do once you're in that space with them. So Lauren, do you want to start us off just by kind of thinking about what some of the signs are that you would recognize that a meltdown might be coming?
Yes, body language, I think, is the main sign that a meltdown might be happening. Your child's body language might shift slowly or rather suddenly. For example, stimming or covering like their ears with their hands or tensing their shoulders. That's normally a telltale sign that something's off balance, as I put it.
Right, that's really key actually, isn't it? Recognizing they may not communicate it verbally. In fact, chances are you'll notice it more in their body language, and that tension is really key. I think also with covering the ears, that to me is a sign that the kind of the sensory input from the outside world is becoming too much, and maybe their tolerance levels are lower than they might be at other times. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. I think tolerance is a really key word with recognizing meltdowns, because something for me, if I can tolerate something on a normal day, but then the same thing will happen when I'm about to have a meltdown, I won't necessarily be able to tolerate it. So I become quite snappy, which brings in language as a way of identifying an incoming meltdown.
So then even in the language, it can be quite short and snappy, and maybe being short with people come across as blunt or maybe even sounding angry or frustrated, I suppose.
Yes, or just not being able to communicate. At a point, I'm able to communicate, but if I'm approaching a meltdown, I won't be able to communicate verbally.
So that's all really key. So we're looking for those changes in body language that might indicate meltdown's coming. And like you said, sometimes that can happen really suddenly. Sometimes it can take longer. So your kind of time to prepare for what might happen next can vary. And it'll vary between different children. And it'll vary, I think, even for one child, it might be that one day it seems like a really sudden change. And other times it seems like actually it's building for quite a bit longer. But then when you get to that moment, I suppose recognizing the signs is some parents would think, okay, well, what can we do then to prevent it? But actually, a lot of it, recognizing the signs that something's about to change, is also about preparing yourself as the adult to go into that space. So being aware of your own emotions in that moment so that you're ready to help your child. What do you think?
I think there's definitely the worry of, if I see these signs, how can we prevent it? And I think that's a whole separate discussion anyway, on whether or not it is important to prevent one, or you need to let a meltdown happen. But I think for parents, if they kind of know the signs or notice a pattern of the signs as to why it's happening, it'll be easier for them to kind of not practice, but get the tools necessary for their toolbox to deal with the situation. And I think what we want to discuss is one of the ways to help your child and tuning into your child as a meltdown is to create this toolbox so that you're well equipped and regulated to deal with a meltdown.
Right, so that toolbox is actually for you as the adult or the parent in that situation, just as much as it's giving your child tools. So I always talk about the difference sort of between self-regulation and co-regulation. We can't often, especially in meltdown, at times of meltdown, expecting a child to be able to regulate for themselves and kind of de-escalate the situation is not realistic and it's not fair. So one of the most effective things that we can do as the adult in that situation is to say, right, okay, we're going to regulate with them, and we're then going to set the emotional tone for that time and space. So if we're calm in everything that we do in terms of our breathing and the way that we're speaking, that's going to really help the situation. But in order to do that as an adult, you have to be regulated. So you have to have those tools to know, okay, something's coming, I need to stay calm in myself, whether that's breathing techniques or just taking a bit of time, making sure you're in a quiet space so that you're not distracted by other things around you. Is there anything else that you would recommend for the adult to prepare themselves?
I think give yourself kindness. I think more than anything, there's obviously you can't prepare for every single situation, and each situation is a different experience. You could be out in public, you could be in a home, you could have had 7 meltdowns in a day, or none for a few months. But I think to be kind with yourself, that remember that you are a human too, I think it goes a long way. For me, as someone who's autistic and has meltdowns, I know that I sense based on other people's body language, and I can feel their emotions too. So if you're stressed, I'm going to feel stressed. So I think the best way is to just kind of have a kind of calmer mindset if you can in the moment.
That's really important, actually, just to think about from that perspective of being kind to yourself. Because if you're frustrated, or you feel like you should have recognized it earlier, or that you should be doing something different because these meltdowns shouldn't be happening if you were doing things differently, it's not going to help, especially not in that moment. There is always time and space to reflect if you want to afterwards on how to do things differently. But actually, in that moment, it is just going to know what, I'm a human, I'm here, and right now I just need to focus on being present in this moment with my child and helping calm the situation as best I can. And I find it really interesting what you say, that even now as an adult, you really feed off of other people's emotions. And it shows how important it is that the emotion of the other person is in check and that they're calm in that space with you. Otherwise, it's going to fuel your stress and your kind of stress, even anxiety, even more.
Yes, it would. So I think the first main tip that I would say is to sit calmly, to sit and share the space with your child in a calm manner. Examples that I'm going to give are based off if you're having this meltdown at home, but it could work outside of the home as well. Is if your child, let's say, is on the floor having their meltdown and they're in a safe area and you know that they're safe in a surround space, just sitting on the floor and letting them have their meltdown. Just sit calmly on the floor. Doesn't have to be right on top of them. It could be on the other side of the room or in the corner, or it could be next to them. It doesn't matter depending on your child and how they feel about space. Sometimes if they don't mind being touched, because again, not everyone likes that, maybe a stroking or tapping, just something calming to regulate them, but nothing drastic. Maybe even say, I'm going to stroke you if that's okay. And just so you're keeping them aware of what you're about to do, but then also kind of trying to attempt to take a little bit of pressure off that situation.
That's really key, actually. I like what you say about preparing them for what you're about to do, so that they know that you're there, that you're in control, that you're saying what you're doing. And then they've also kind of, it creates an environment that's more predictable. But also, one thing that I am really cautious of is minimizing too much verbal communication. So not talking through things or trying to find out what the problem is or asking questions or expecting any kind of response. Just if something needs to be said, just really calm, simple sentences just to explain what's going on. Anything that needs to be said that's reassuring, like you said, depending on your child, whether or not they need to know, whether or not they like being touched, how close or how far away you're sitting, do they need to hear your voice or not, to recognize, so that they feel comforted, but not talking too much about things that aren't going to help in that moment.
Yeah, I would avoid talking about the situation perhaps that triggered the meltdown if you know, because then that kind of ends up in a snowball situation. I know for me personally, if I start talking about it, I'll go really repetitive about what the problem is. It's about getting your child out of that situation so that you can deal with the situation in a calm manner. So one of the ways I would suggest getting your child perhaps to be out of the meltdown phase is using distraction. Obviously, you know your child best, so whether they like music or they like books, films, or just even getting into their special interest is such a good way to engage your child so that they're out of the meltdown and focusing on something else. Obviously, it depends again what's going on. Don't force it, but maybe subtly go in with this train, I saw a picture of this train today. Do you like this train? Or do you know anything about it? But not like harsh pushing questions, just test the waters.
I really like that. So we sort of moved from, as an adult, you're recognizing the signs, you're getting your own emotions in check to go into that space. You're sitting, you're getting into a mode where you're comfortable sharing that space, where your child isn't regulated, knowing that you're keeping yourself regulated. And then once things are, you're calmly settled in that space, even if they're not calm, then it's thinking about, okay, I want to distract them and find something else to engage them with to help them come out of that in their own pace. I'm not forcing it, I'm not dictating the conversation. I'm just trying to guide them to something else that they can engage in to help them come out of that meltdown.
Sometimes you just got to let someone cry it out. I mean, I've had it before that no amount of distractions going to do anything. Sometimes you do just have to let it happen, and it's perfectly fine for that to happen. It's their way of regulating themselves at the end of the day. But different techniques and different like games, even like mindless games on like Candy Crush on your phone, is really great ways to kind of engage working active memory, which helps stop anxiety basically. And that's one of the ways I do it.
Tip. I think people are really cautious sometimes about bringing in technology, but it definitely does have a place when it's used in a certain way. And this might be one of those times when actually it can be helpful just to help kind of settle those kind of anxious feelings. Okay, that's really great. So what we've kind of got then is that whole pattern all the way through. And then afterwards, that's the time sort of to reflect once the meltdown's over, everyone's had a bit of chance to recover as well. That's when you can start to think about, okay, is there something that we could avoid next time? Are there any questions that you would ask or that you would particularly avoid maybe when you're kind of trying to reflect on a meltdown later on?
I think the first one is fault. I think it's really easy to try and put fault on, or try to put fault on something. Whether it's, for me personally, I find fault is I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm sorry, I had a meltdown. Oh my God, it's my fault we had this meltdown. But then also I know that my parents at points have felt like it's their fault. What could they have done? I think throw fault out the window and just kind of, again, be kind to yourself in that moment. Questions I'd ask is there a pattern? Does this meltdown happen every Tuesday afternoon? What's happening on a Tuesday afternoon? Or did a routine change, or just little things, or really what might have caused it? I wouldn't even like go on about it too much about what caused it, unless it's a specific thing. Sometimes it just happens and it's a big build up. I think the priority is that you're safe, your child's safe, and they're regulated at the end of the day, and you can see, well, this actually worked, or this didn't work.
But even though lots of parents might look at it and when they're reflecting afterwards and be like, oh, something went wrong because that meltdown happened, actually celebrating those small wins of everyone came out of that safely and calmly, and that's a positive thing, that we are finding strategies to cope when things don't go well, is really important in its own way. And holding that space and allowing yourself to feel positive about it is also really helpful. I think what you were saying about as well made me think of how many parents feel a sense of guilt or shame. And I think there's a sense for a child or even an adult when they're going through a meltdown afterwards and someone's been there and witnessed it with them, that there can be real feelings of embarrassment too. So thinking about all of those emotions when you're handling questions or having a conversation, I think is really important, so that you recognize it's okay, and it really is okay, and this is absolutely a part of life, and just validating that that is someone's emotional experience and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and so that we can move forward positively.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you so much. So we've spoken today about tuning into your child's meltdown and how to think about recognizing the signs, as well as some of those strategies of what to do or what not to do when a meltdown comes along. We hope you found this helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.